high.
180 over 120.
It's squeezing his pulmonary artery.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks. I am your host, Carolyn Hines, film culture critic and journalist, and this is the YouTube channel / podcast where I speak to film creatives around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today I'm very happy to be joined by director Guy Trevellyan and actress Anna Popplewell to talk about their new short film, Plastic Surgery, which talks about, I think, an issue that more people need to pay attention to, the issue of forever plastics being present in the human body, but in particular human cells and the blood. And this was, and I'm guessing Guy is inspired by this for this film by the discovery of forever plastics in the human body in 2022 in a study that was done. And Anna plays a surgeon who, on her she's about to sign off to go on maternity leave, all hell breaks loose. And watching this film was kind of surreal to me because it not only talks about the urgency of forever plastics and the need for at least social awareness, but also kind of might remind me of COVID and like the COVID pandemic. And that was a trip to watching this film, how it all unfolded. But first, before we begin talking about it, thank you so much, Guy and Anna, for joining me. Yay!
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So first, I mentioned that this film is clearly inspired by the discovery of forever plastics in the human body and in the blood and cells. So Guy, when exactly did you learn of this discovery? Because I only found out about it, I think, in 2023. The discovery is made in 2022, and they did some journal entries, but I only first heard about it in 2023. When did you first hear of it?
So I actually heard of it during COVID, actually just before COVID. When I was studying at the Met Film School, I did a project with the Ocean Agency with my sister as well, which was looking at the effects of climate change on coral reefs around the world. And it was giving me a lot of insight into marine life and the threat that we're posing to marine life globally. And that's kind of where I started to look more and do some research about microplastics. And when I discovered, it was mainly about marine life at first, but then I discovered all the research that was happening about surrounding our health. So yeah, I think it would have been in 2020, I think, just before COVID. And then I wrote it, well, the first draft during COVID, which is why it's interesting you said about how it reminded you of that period of time, because it very much was that isolating disease kind of was on my mind. So, alone writing it at home when you're all isolated. So that definitely had an impact on the script for sure.
And for you, Anna, when were you first made aware of like microplastics in being discovered in not only in nature, we know about in nature, but particularly the human body and in the blood and cells?
I think probably similar to you. Like I read about those studies when they were published. And I don't know when, I couldn't pinpoint like when this study came out, but the discoveries of the presence of microplastics in fetuses as well, I remember being extremely shocked by. And I suppose that's quite relevant in the context of this short film because my character's pregnant and I was actually pregnant when shooting. So I kind of had that in mind as like an extra degree of urgency in terms of how we're treating our planet and our use of microplastics.
Yeah, I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from Barbados, so I grew up like swimming in the ocean and snorkeling and everything. And when I was young, I wanted to be a marine biologist, and I used to work at a research station. And there was a lot of research being done about microplastics in the ocean and like plastic pollution in the ocean. Like plastic is a huge threat to marine life, and this is known around the world. But I think a lot of people aren't aware of like plastics being ingested by animals and like how it is like found in their stomachs and even in like their muscles and stuff when they're found. And so when it was published that like, oh, we're finding them in the human body, I'm like, of course it makes sense, and like it makes sense in a macabre way because so much of what we ingest in our bodies is put in through by plastic, as is inferred in the film, like through the use of plastic forks, the polystyrene bottles that we use, the polystyrene trays that our meat in the rest in like supermarkets are presented in, and but your film really does kind of show the horror of what these plastics could look like if we could see them. Like they're microscopic. They're like I was reading one report that said like they were looking at them between 700 to 500,000 nanometers, which is like what's this at 124 times smaller than the width of a human hair, right? And so like we abstract in as humans, we what out of sight, out of mind, we can't see it. But this film really kind of brings in a horror, like what if we could see, and Anna, I want to ask you, as the actress playing this, like you're playing this Dr. Elizabeth Terror, which I'm guessing her last name is a play on the word terror. Is she's just like she's pregnant, and as you said, like you were pregnant at the time in filming. I want to ask you, like just like going through that emotionally as an actress, first in reading the script, going back through what you first heard about it, reading the script, and then in the performance of it, and like your character goes through this wild emotional arc. The film is only 11 minutes, but she like goes through this intense emotional arc from the beginning because she's happy, she's excited, she's pregnant, she can't wait to go home, and then like all hell breaks loose literally just like that. So I want to ask about like just managing that emotional balancing act as a performer, and like realizing like she's a mother but she's also a doctor, and her job is to cure and to fix, and she's like running from it because she's like, how, like I have to worry about myself and about my body and about my child.
Yeah, thank you for that, such a thoughtful question. It's so interesting that you said terror as in terror, because I actually hadn't noticed that. I had assumed it was terror, like the sort of root word for earth. But Guy probably intended both, and I had just missed one of them.
Well, it was actually only meant to be terror for earth because it's Latin for earth, which is the terror, the double R-A instead of ER. But yes, you could see it in both ways. But yeah.
But yeah, it was such a lovely arc to play because well, firstly, in terms of the logistics, Guy had very kindly arranged the schedule so that we were shooting chronologically. So that makes it a lot easier to chart that journey for the character. I think that it was really appealing and important for us to meet Dr. Terra in a place of kind of comfort. Like she kind of thinks, oh, she's made it to the end of work before mat leave. And I, just speaking from personal experience of what friends have gone through with pregnancies and things, that's kind of a like hairy last couple of months where you're kind of just hoping that you make it to the end of work without too many complications and without getting too exhausted. And so I think when we first see her, she's kind of in this sort of a cloud nine state almost, of like she's made it, she's done it, she's gonna go home and have her baby and all's well. And starting from that place of relaxation or that place of kind of joy, I think gives her further to go in terms of the disaster that unfolds and chaos that happens. So that was like a lovely jumping off point to that. And I think it's just once the kind of threat starts snowballing, it's really just a question of her managing that. Like she's continually kind of shocked by what they're finding. And then it turns into this sort of surreal, horrendous, horrifying situation where the scale of the microplastic in people's bodies is overwhelming. And then, of course, when she finds microplastic in her own body and the implied threat that has for her unborn child, then that's the sort of peak of that. And at the end of the film, we leave her at this point of having to kind of make a decision about whether to continue trying to save her patient or to try and save herself, really, which of course is an allegory for what the earth is constantly having to do in terms of support humanity with its resources, but also kind of regenerate and heal itself as a result of the damage we inflict on it.
I always say, like, a lot of what's happening globally with the climate change and global warming and everything, I say a lot of it has to do with the earth is just tired of us. We've done so much harm to her, and she's just like, I something has to give. and unfortunately, what happens in the falling apart of it, like things get destroyed, humans get destroyed, world, people's entire worlds crash. And in this film, like Elizabeth's world is crashing, and it's crashing. What really struck me with this film is how soon it happens. Like it just happens, one phone call, and that's it. That's when like the horror begins unleashing. And I'm not good with body horror. I will admit that. I and the thing is I can deal with I volunteered in an ER, so I've seen like severed limbs and stuff in real life, and that does not make me squeamish. But seeing it in on screen for some reason bothers me. And this film, like, kudos to your props master and makeup department, because I think they did a really good job, because I was squeamish a lot. But what I want to ask you, and I'm going to pose most of my questions here to Anna first, since I know she has to leave soon, is how, for you as an actress, what is it like having like things like the body horror, you know, like the props and the makeup help you as an actress, like really get into the emotional space? Because the setting for this film, it does change very quickly. Like again, like her emotional state changes, and so does the physical set. And I noticed that like as everything begins to unfold, like the entire set just becomes chaotic. The hospital goes from very orderly, very clean and pristine, to just like blood on the walls. It looks like even mold is even growing on the walls, and everything is just chaotic. And I wanted to ask you, as an actress, like I usually ask sometimes about costuming and how costuming helps performers get into their space. But I want to ask you about how does the set design and the cost and the makeup department and what they did help to get into this emotional space? Because like it's one thing to be in the frenzy of it, like if it's like an accident or whatever, but it's just like gore constantly. And so I wanted to ask you about that, because I was really curious about what it was like for you just seeing it play out in real life on set, and how that also helps you get into the emotional space. Because the scene where she was pulling the bottle off the throat, I was like, what is happening here?
Yeah, we had the most wonderful special effects makeup. Rebecca Wheeler did like a brilliant job with all under like incredible time pressure with so many different makeups. And as you say, having like beautiful art direction and incredible special effects makeup is really helpful in terms of performance. Like obviously you're reacting to what you're seeing. So I was very fortunate as well, because in the big scene where there are lots of patients on the emergency ward, I actually didn't see any of those makeups until we shot that scene. So I was kind of tucked away in my dressing room while everyone was busily preparing, and then the first time I got to see all those really gory makeups was on camera. So that's just that does half of my job for me, for sure. And then I think just the way Guy had very carefully thought about how he wanted to block the film in terms of movement and in terms of camera, and that very brilliantly, I think, like charts the journey from comfort to chaos. So we start on kind of slightly more static stuff, and we have a very beautiful like well, I don't know what it's called, Guy, you will, that shot where you move around everyone.
The 360 Steadicam.
Which was like the first operation we do, which was like highly choreographed and all very smooth, almost like choreographing a dance. And then by the time we get to the final scene when Dr. Tara's on her own, I was like racing around this tiny room, throwing props everywhere, and the camera is kind of wild and quite shaky. And so that also really helps to kind of get into the journey from comfort to chaos, I think.
And Guy, what was it like with you working with your set designer and the props master, and figuring out how you wanted this set to look? Because this set does play a lot into getting the audience into the mindset of what is happening, of like going from the calm to the chaos, just like that. And like as I said, for me, it reminded me very much of how like for everything with COVID just happened, like just like all converged at one time, and it was just like utter chaos. And so, and it kind of, the urgency of this situation, like there is something wrong, we need to fix it, reminded me not only of COVID, but also again like the urgency of like our world is like burning, You know, she's flooding, she's falling apart. Like there's so many right now in the Philippines and in Vietnam. There's like a typhoon raging in the Philippines and in Vietnam, and it's like wreaking havoc. And it's like that's one of the aspects of like how much damage has been done to this planet. But the film takes it from the macro, the overall planet, to the micro, literally, to the microscopic, to how it's affecting us microscopically, and how that internally kind of has a effect on all of us. I want to ask you, like, how you and your team decided this is how we want to translate it on screen for the audience to get this overall sense.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that I wanted to convey this idea of their world kind of falling apart as well. Like, a lot of the references I had were I don't Darren Aronofsky's Mother,
Mm,
Stranger Things. This idea of a collapsing world over time, and you start to see that in the production design. So very early on in prep with the set sisters who are brilliant. I think there was always someone flying up on a wall painting something or stitching something together or building a prop or it was a real team effort, and they were absolutely incredible. And we just had this idea that as the characters are slowly going into chaos, so does the camera. We go from statics to very fluid movement to handheld. So it's a progression of chaos. Same with the music, and then with the production design, it starts quite clinical, quite clean, quite warm when you're in the office, and then it dives into darker with the color grade. The color grade gets darker and darker throughout the film, just like in Harry Potter with the Warner Bros. Sign. It's always darker every film, and then the production design was the cherry on top. Really, that's where we wanted to really show this degrading world around them. So the walls, as you said, have mold. We kind of had this painted mold on the walls. We started to singe the curtains in the ward to make it look like they'd been burned. We painted the intercom as well. The image of the intercom
yeah.
throughout the film gets splashed with blood. It gets mold that seeps from within it. It kind of looks like a black hole. So we had that feeling like there was something wrong inside that was seeping out of it. So we did a lot of Stranger Things kind of references of this mold appearing from the intercom. So yeah, a lot of that played into it, and then into the prosthetics, as you said. The prosthetics, uh, you know, we wanted to show plastics that we use it in everyday life, and things that transfer into our body through how we drink, how we eat, what we wear, to how we breathe. But we wanted to show it in this visually striking way. So we had a lot of fun with Rebecca.
And I want to ask about the casting, not only of Anna to play Elizabeth, but also the voice who does the intercom, Daniel Ing. And the reason I'm asking about the casting of Daniel along with Anna is that she interacts with this intercom almost as though it's this dark specter. You know, it seems like an intercom. Yes, the voice is like the person that does that does like hospital administration. So doctor, go to this ward, whichever. But from the very jump, I thought the intercom seemed more like a camera, and it seemed more like someone who is watching her constantly. And
Mm.
he just seems sinister. And Elizabeth reacts to him as though he's a sinister presence. You know, as though like this isn't someone just calling me, you know, to go see this patient. No, this voice is just like the specter of doom in her existence. And I wanted to ask you about casting Anna and then finding the voice that you wanted for this intercom, because he just seemed every time he spoke, I was like, you know what, you need to shush because you bring nothing but bad news. Stop.
Well, the funny thing is, Dan, I've been wanting to work with him for a while, and I did a film with him called Stuntman, uh,
Mm,
and then when we were working on that together, sent him the script, and he said he always wanted to get involved in some way. So then he came and did the intercom recording, and it was really fun because I was always playing with the idea that the intercom. I mean, for Anna on set, I mean, it was probably a bit different because there wasn't much in the script for the intercom. Like there was only a few bits and pieces, and then actually it was probably more annoying because I was doing this annoying chime every time Anna was during a take. I'd do the dun 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 dun
It
or some
wasn't annoying. It was
and
useful.
and then I'd say something weird, and I'd be the intercom voice on set for Anna. But then with Dan, we had a lot of fun in post where we made him go full out and then trail it way back. So we did loads of versions of him being more clinical and electronic and robotic to being really violent and out there and accusatory because I wasn't sure how I wanted to play the intercom. I was going either one route of it being very accusatory and it becoming almost how how desperate humans get when we're in trouble, and when we're threatened, who do we blame? And we blame
Yeah.
what's around us. So I always had this idea of it going really full steam ahead with the intercom, but actually after watching the edit and how powerful Anna's performance was, it wasn't really needed. It kind of Anna brought so much weight to that role that actually the intercom was really just something that helped push her into spaces and get her into a certain room and push us along narratively. But really, Anna did all the work of actually giving us what we needed for that feeling. But yeah, so that was kind of why. So I knew Dan before we cast as well.
And talk about casting Anna. Like, how did you two like what was the casting process like? Did you have to do auditions, or did you already also have Anna in mind for the role? And once like Anna was on board, like what was the discussion that you both had, not only about the script but the overall topic of it and like everything that's happening?
Yeah, I mean, Anna, do you want to go? Do you want to go first? I don't mind.
Yeah, Guy got in touch with my agents and sent them the script, and I read it and thought it was really good. And then we spoke on Zoom. And he just really seemed like he put so much thought into it. And I thought it was I always think short films are such a good medium for making a strong point. And this really did that. So that was very exciting for me to be part of. But the only hitch was that the character at the time wasn't written as pregnant, and I was pregnant. So I said to Guy, look, I'd really love to do it, but I have to tell you, if you're going to shoot in March, I'll be like 7 months pregnant. And to his absolute credit, he was so generous about it and was like, oh, great, I'm sure we can make that work, no problem. And that was just
rewrite the whole thing.
and he rewrote it, and it was so that was just another green flag for me because actually it's a very complicated industry to be pregnant in because it can be quite difficult. Understandably, it can be quite difficult for filmmakers or producers to accommodate that. And the fact that he was so open to making that part of the story just made me more enthusiastic about working with him, to be honest. And I actually do think it works. I mean, I don't think, Guy, you were just doing it so that we could do the movie together. I think it was that it fitted really well with the content of the short film.
It translated really well, and then exactly that. It was more that it was kind of a brainwave moment when you said that. I think because I was in some trailer park in Bristol and it was pissing it down with rain, and and then when you said that you were pregnant, I kind of was like, damn it, why didn't I think of doing that initially? Because it's so, I mean, it just works so well. I mean, what better way to represent Mother Nature than a pregnant woman? So, someone on the verge of giving life. And then it gave me well, I just had so many brainwaves with the script because I started to think about how does that make the character vulnerable, and putting someone who's pregnant into that world, how fragile and vulnerable that person becomes, and as an audience member you're immediately drawn to the person that's in danger, and you want to help her and make sure that she's okay. So I think in this story, it being character driven is really fully because of Anna being pregnant. So thanks to that.
And I think it was also like a good visual representation of what the stakes are for for us doing something about this crisis, you know, the impact for future generations as well. So that all worked really well. And then we had a like quite forensic chat before the shoot about the character and the way you were going to shoot it. And then we also had a day of rehearsal, which was a real luxury on a short film.
Yeah, we did. We went to the location, to the hospital set, because well, with shorts you don't have time.
Yeah.
You barely have time during the day, and time is your enemy. So anything you can do in prep, I think it was, I only really took Anna to the hospital just so that Anna could see the space in the area and get a bit of an idea of the area it is, because in the role she would have been there for years. So it's one of those things where, if you're asking someone to come in for a short film and then day one, it just helps with getting into that character, I think. We didn't massively over rehearse anything really. I think we just kind of walked through the rooms, I think, and then probably me talking crazy about how we are going to cover things and waffling on, but
That was it was really helpful, and we pretty much blocked it. And you knew, I mean, the guy had so forensically storyboarded everything and knew exactly what he wanted from each scene. And actually, I'm an actor who really likes knowing that and knowing what's going to be covered where. So I found that incredibly helpful going into our shoot. So yeah.
Yeah, the thing is about the character being pregnant and you being pregnant in real life is that in disaster movies, and I would consider this a disaster film, this is a disaster movie, is that in disaster films or TV shows like The Walking Dead, one of my favorites up to a point, is that when you have a character who is pregnant, everyone gets on the same page that this is the person we need to protect. If there's children there, you protect the children because children are the future, but it's also children are the most vulnerable because they don't have any way to protect themselves. And same thing for a pregnant woman, like people protect her not only because she's physically vulnerable, but like we instinctively and intuitively know we protect this person, we can protect the future, and like in every disaster film, horror film, whatever, if there's a pregnant character, no matter how ridiculous the characters can be individually, they mostly get on the same page and say, this is our priority, protecting this person. And in this film, what I thought was interesting is that that doesn't happen because everyone is so focused on saving the patients. The patients are the most vulnerable because in a hospital, first the Hippocratic oath says, first do no harm. The patient is the priority. So in this hospital, in this disaster, Elizabeth isn't even the priority as a pregnant woman. The patients are. And so this is where I think that you guys do such a really good job of like really bringing up the stakes and say, not only is she struggling as a doctor, she's struggling in an environment where people aren't even really cognizant of the fact that she herself is vulnerable as a pregnant woman.
Well,
everyone
also
is
more
on the patients.
More than that, she's also the person who has the skills to save those other people. They're actually, it's not about whether or not they can protect her, it's that they're very reliant on her to save them. Which is, I think it's nice that it's not like a cliche of a pregnant character,
which is what I love. She wasn't the weak damsel in distress. She's the one with the scalpel that everyone is looking to save everyone. But that's where I think the real stakes are, is like she has the tools, literally, as you said, to save everyone, but she also has the tools to save herself. And she having to make that choice as a doctor and then as a mother, who do I save? The patients or myself? But then it's like at the end, like the film is open-ended. You're wondering, who does she save, and if the decision that she makes to save the person that she saves, is it even gonna work? Because like her body is like the plastic is coming out of her body too. Like she's not left unscathed. And then I was thinking, is the baby even unscathed as well? Because the baby possibly has the baby more than likely has the plastics in their body. So like the film has like a really, I think really intense discussion of what are the stakes for us as humanity. Like, who do we save? How do we save them? And like, it's like,
I mean, it's interesting you mentioned about because I was thinking about this the other day. Like whenever, Mother Nature has the power to bounce back, right? But with stuff like plastic, it can't be destroyed. It's always there, floating about and in the environment. So it's interesting, this idea of, this future image where Mother Nature is forced to fight back and protect herself, but yet that plastic will still be there, even though the earth will grow around it and the vines will grow around it and plants will grow around it. The plastic will still be there. So as you were saying about this life, being infected, I guess it still will be. We've done that damage, and it's a really powerful image, for sure. Yeah.
It is, because it made me think, because I was talking with some friends about this on Twitter not too long ago, because I remember in the 90s, all of the countries got together and said we need to close up the ozone layer. Remember, there was a massive hole in the ozone layer over the Antarctic, and all of the countries got on board and said we need to monitor these EPAs, these EPA levels. We need to reduce, reuse, recycle. Came up, that was the motto, but then it was like they limited how much aerosolized sprays people could lose, like hero sprays that those kind of went out. This kind of went and stick almost instantly. Women stopped using hairspray to a large extent, like aerosolized perfumes and stuff. That's how we started getting the gel packs for like air fresheners, because they stopped really manufacturing the aerosolized air fresheners. So they started doing with the gel packs, and like the ozone layer closed up. And now it's like, why isn't the government coming together to kind of manage like climate change the same way? Why are
Well,
we
there's so many things going on in the world, and the classic thing is that as soon as humans are are threatened, we tend to jump to protect ourselves. So for COVID, for example, the environment, talks about the environment were on an all-time rise. It was everything in the news, and suddenly COVID happened, and then the environment's forgotten about. So it's really just something always comes in and takes over the discussion. And then war breaks out, with Ukraine, and then there's so many things which are that jump on top of each other. And I feel with plastic surgery, that writing it during COVID, it kind of came out in the perfect time, because I think at the moment people are really now starting to understand the effects of microplastics. Also, the fact that we used plastic to protect ourselves, which I found ironic, and we alluded to that in the film. All the PPE equipment we would use. I mean, I remember going for a test, because I had to test 3 or 4 times a day for work, because if I was around cast members on a TV show or a film, you were considered risk, because you don't want to get them infected. So we tested, I think, 4 times a day, and it was horrible. You'd have, some woman would come and shove a swab up your nose, and it was the morning wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning when you're about to walk on set. But all the plastic that comes with that, and you just think, I did that 4 times a day for a 6-month shoot, basically, and just that the waste is involved is scary. So it's very, very interesting. But
and I know you have to go now, so I want. No, you're going to say something.
No, I was going to say, I'm sorry that I think I have to go and get ready for the show, but it's so nice to talk to you, and thank you for being so accommodating about timing and everything.
No, for sure. Thank you for taking the time for speaking with me. And again, I really love the performance of like you and everyone on Cat. So congratulations, and have a good day on set.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing a play, so I'm gonna go put my costume on and get on stage now. Take care. Bye bye.
Tonight. I'll speak
nice
to you in a bit.
See you. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
So going on from what you were saying, like with COVID, and like since I've been doing these interviews since 2020, I always use the phrase there's before COVID and after COVID. Like how filmmakers look at, I found, like, especially like a lot of short film filmmakers in particular, because I do so many interviews with short film filmmakers, is like, I think COVID really did change the way a lot of filmmakers look at the filming process and even their creative process. And I want to ask you, you mentioned like going on set and doing the testing, but how for you as a writer, like going through that process, like we can see the influence in plastic surgery, but how for you did that really fundamentally change the way you looked at the world, and perhaps change the way you wanted to look at yourself as a production? Because you have your production company, Nice Guy Productions, and you mentioned the project you did for the NGO, and I saw the clip that you did for that NGO, which focuses on ocean conservation and social awareness. And I wanted to ask you, just like, how, like, going through that experience, and how did it fundamentally change the way you looked at yourself as a filmmaker and a writer and say, this is what I want to really
Yeah.
focus on?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, I think for me, because this is my debut short, this is my first film directing, and so I guess COVID and being in isolation, definitely altered how I wanted to, what I wanted to do. I think especially just the news in general these days, I feel like the cinema that I love is cinema that is impactful and makes me walk out of a cinema and change the way I look at the world or look at something and change my opinion on something, or it makes me informed and makes me better understand the plight of someone else or someone else's cause. I think that is where true cinema power lies, is being able to change people's opinions and people's minds. So that's kind of where I want to focus in my work, is mainly based on social impact and blending that with genre filmmaking, because I think there's no, in terms of connecting to a wider audience, and if you want to get a message across to people globally, there's no better way of doing that than connecting to people on a personal level, a character-driven story, a narrative that people can follow and invest in, instead of just reading, news on the TV or reading an article or reading research on something that you don't always get the soul and the heart of what it really means. So cinema has this amazing power to put you in the shoes of this, you know, put plastic surgery, for example, put you in the shoes of this hospital in this scenario, this surreal world, but they're very real characters. They're very real characters, that are thrown into this world. And I think that is what I want to focus on. So I think, yeah, joining the industry, back in 2018, 2019, and then basically going to work, and then COVID started. So a lot of my film life has been centered or started in COVID, wearing masks on set and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and then I don't know, the body horror thing kind of came out of nowhere. It was never meant to be a body horror.
Oh.
It was always, the script was never going to be that visual, but then it just naturally developed over time, and when I had Rebecca Wheeler on, I realized, we could actually make something pretty powerful here. And then I had this graphic designer mock up some pieces where I wanted to see plastic inside our body on X-ray machines. So on the light box, you'd see on an X-ray, and you'd see plastic inside your brain or your heart or whatever. And so that just made me realize how powerful it would be to see that imagery, physically, on a human body and seeping out of a human body. So there was a lot of references to Last of Us, The Walking Dead, there's quite a lot of stuff like that as well.
Yeah, and so the thing for me, one of the things that really made this film really stick with me is, I mentioned, not only everyone experienced COVID, but like,
Mm.
um when I had read about the discovery, it happened before then, but I found out really about it only in 2023. I was thinking about, like, how, as I mentioned before, like, most things that we use in our bodies has plastic in some way, like, we use, if we go out to eat, like, you get like disposable plastic forks, straws, cups, and I was just thinking, every time we bite down on a plastic fork, minute particles of the fork is entering into our bodies along with the food. When you use a plastic cutting board, you cut, and I'm thinking, every time you make a slice onto this plastic cutting board, the minute particles of the plastic is getting in to the meat. Every time you wash plastic dishes, minute particles are being scraped off into the washer, into the drain that goes into the agricultural system, everything. And I was just thinking, so much there is unavoidable, right? So, like, the body horror in the film makes it like it's unavoidable. Like, you can't, as I said, bring the mic you took the idea of the climate change and plastic pollution down to the microscopic, talking about microplastics, but then you blew it back up. Like, if what would we do if we could see these particles expanded, and like, for
Yeah.
me, I have multiple sclerosis. So multiple sclerosis means I have, like, scars in my brain. And I was just thinking, not only do I have scars in my brain, I probably got plastic particles in my brain too, right?
Yeah,
So like
it's
that was like an existential threat. So when I saw the film
yeah,
and like that film kind of visualized everything that I was thinking in my head, it was like it's like you guys like went into my brain and thought
yeah.
brought everything that I was thinking about and put it
Mm,
on screen for me to see. So that's what also made it extra surreal. And it was just
mm.
the and like when Elizabeth she takes the scalpel and looks like she's going to like try to excise the pieces, that made me think of like how I've had 4 surgeries, and I just thought like how many pieces of plastic from the surgeries that I've had is in my body, and like would I try to take a scalpel
Yeah,
to cut it out if I could see it, right? So like you guys
yeah,
did a fantastic job just visualizing that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's pretty scary. In terms of like when you were talking about is it avoidable? The answer to that is interesting because actually there's a lot of things that you can do individually. This is if I'll take this back to when we screened the film in Cine Eco in Portugal a couple of
Mm,
weeks back or a month ago, and the programmers surprised me because they invited three or four schools to come and
mm,
watch the film and the screening. So it was kids from the age of 11 all the way up till 18, loads of them watching the film. And that was the first time I'd seen kids that young and their reaction to the film, and how powerful it was to them. When we reached the Q&A, they were asking me all these questions about what can we do to avoid it? Does my mum have plastic in her? Does my dad have plastic in him? Is there anything I can do? What are you doing? What is there something? Should we feel guilty? There's lots of these questions that fly about, and the answer to that really is it's a kind of two-pronged thing, really. There's things that you can do in your personally to change your everyday life, things that you can avoid, things that you can do from buying a bamboo or wood toothbrush to, plastic toothpaste pellets to always having a water bottle, having a keep cup instead of getting the coffee ones. When you buy food from the supermarket, try and avoid any packaged food. Try to get the fruits or vegetables that are sold. And, there's things that you can do. There's also on top of that, there's so many amazing technological advances in microplastic filtration coming out. So, from filtering the water system that we have in our sink, so that the drinking water that we have is filtered from microplastics. That's a big thing that's been kicking up from last year into this year. Also, from not even that, but our dishwasher and washing machines. There's companies which are progressing, domestic devices that you can attach to your washing machine, which limits the plastic that goes from the washing machine. Because when you wash your clothes, it basically has the grinds, right?
yeah.
To clean it. And that basically is just picking off plastic particles that end up being washed out into the sewage system and into the water system, into the Thames and into the ocean, into the environment. So there's filters that you can add to your machines that can stop that. So there is things you can do, but can you fully avoid it? This is the scary thing because I mean, if you live in a city, you're breathing the air in, and especially if you live in a city, there are the plastic particles that are in the air, the clothes that you wear, even that seeps into the skin, and you don't know how much plastic's in your clothes, especially if you wear nylon or certain plastics for sportswear. Even the food that you're eating, if you go to a restaurant, if you pick fish, it's predominantly got higher amounts of plastic. There's so many interesting things. But there's also a responsibility on governments and organizations to allow people to have a choice because there's so many places in the world where you don't have clean drinking water, you don't have clean access to recycling or even to be able to recycle, which a lot of countries in the world don't even do recycling still. And in terms of the going back to the clean water, you don't have a choice. So there's no filtration. When people say, "Do you feel guilty?" I don't think that's really the right question. Some people can say, "Can you feel guilty?" I don't think it's about guilt,
Mm,
really. But it's really about what you can do with the situation you're in, where you are, and what you can do. And And so, yeah. So it was a long-winded answer to your question.
No, and you're answering it, and it gets into something like, as I was mentioning, like before, like when talking about the ozone layer, when there was the whole, like all of these governments got together and they came up with regulations and rules, and everyone all across the globe were like on the same page, and like so
Yeah.
many pro recycling programs, so many programs about cutting down carbon emissions. Like that's why you have the carbon tax for cars now, to cut down carbon emissions and all that. That was, everyone was on board because it was seen as an existential crisis, right? And now, like things like microplastics aren't seen as an existential crisis. Things like even COVID, up to a certain extent, wasn't seen as isn't seen as an existential crisis. Carbon emissions from private jets by celebrities using their private jets to go from one city to the next to buy food.
Oh, you look at the not to bad name anyone, but you look at Taylor Swift's,
Taylor
carbon
Swift, oh my
footprint.
gosh,
I mean, she's got more carbon footprint than most countries have in total, their population,
ridiculous.
which is scary. And actually, it does bode the question, should someone have that much? Should
Mhm.
someone be allowed to do that? I mean, to take a flight that is actually a 40-second flight just to cut down
Ridiculous.
20 minutes of travel in a car, or could you just cycle it? There's all these things. I mean, yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's no way to really quantify how much a particular individual, has carbon. But it also begins to ask the question about, which is something that I know a few of my friends have, because I'm at the start of that period where people are starting to have children and all that kind of stuff. And I remember there was a big thing in the UK a couple of years back, I think, where a lot of women protest to not have kids because they were too worried about the environment, and
Yeah,
and that they didn't want to have kids. And there were men protesting as well about, basically saying that what's the point in bringing up a kid into the world where they're just going to add more carbon and they're going to add to the problem. And it's an interesting debate, because actually on another side of things, you could say, well, you could be denying the one person that solves the problem, and also you could be denying someone that if most people, if they're environmentally conscious, you pass that consciousness to your kids.
yeah.
Like my sister, for example, is very environmentally conscious,
Mhm.
from working with the Ocean Agency, and she's just had a kid, and she's very, I can already tell that her son is going to be an environmental advocate. It's one of those things. It's just passed on from parent to child. So it's yeah, very interesting topic.
It is, and it's like the dilemma is like, as you said, like you can give birth to the person that solves the problem, but then you think about it, that's like 20, 30, 40 years out, till
Mm,
they can solve the problem. Well, how much damage is done in that space of time? And if you
mm,
don't have, like you said, like your sister, she's very heavily into conservation, she's teaching her son, but then if that's only one person out of 10 that is
yeah.
doing that, when the other 9 people aren't doing that, that's where the problem is, where you're not getting
Yeah.
enough people caring
Well,
about it.
education, yeah. In fact, education, that's a massive point to this film as well, is that we want this film to be shown to a younger audience as well, to educate kids in awareness about plastic in their body, and the threat that it could have to their future. And I think, educating schools and kids about the climate change, the environment, the problem with the environment at the moment is so important. I mean, I think there was two things that I missed when I was at school. One would be, how the hell do you do taxes, and how do you do, how do you buy a house? How do you save money? How do you budget? Never got taught at school. And what's our impact on the environment, and how can we be more environmentally conscious? Those are two things that schools don't really teach that much. They might have some programs and things, but it's not really taught. And I think that is a shame. It should be something that is, and I hope it will be a big topic that will be introduced into schools. There's some amazing charities out there. Kids Against Plastic is a charity that we're hoping to work with, and they're advocating around schools in the UK, about plastic-free campaigns, even plastic-free chewing gum, looking
Mm,
at teaching kids about the dangers of microplastics and how that passes into their body, and choosing plastic-free alternatives and making people more aware of the issue.
mm. Yeah, you mentioned showing it in Portugal. Are there any other schools or other programs that you are looking into having the film shown at different schools? And you would see not only just like elementary, or you're in England, so like same thing in Barbados. We have primary schools and secondary schools, but
Yeah.
like, are there any plans to like show it at like universities, where because like many
Yeah.
universities have programs with chemistry and biology and like conservation, but
Yeah.
also even medicine, like showing it to at a medical school.
Yeah, so we're in talks with a couple charities to do an event next year, which is in basically kind of an educational week, which
Mm.
is where the film will get shown to a lot of different schools and kids in the Southwest area. We're also looking at certain charities that like Kids Against Plastic, Surfers Against Sewage, all these charities which are just doing some amazing work. By partnering with them and approaching schools through those charities, we're able to reach so many kids and get this film in front of the right people. And I think that's the most important thing. Eventually the film will be online and be available for the global public to watch. But in the meantime, we want it to especially hit home with schools and kids. So I think that's really, really important to us. Cine Eco was really just the start of that idea, really, because it's such a great festival out in Portugal, a really brilliant festival. And it's very rare that festivals will do that, invite schools to
Yeah.
watch their stuff. But it's an environmental festival. So, and even what's cooler about it is that it started in 1995. So it's one of the oldest in Europe. And that it was a pretty crazy thing to do, to create an environmental festival during the mid 90s, when at around that time no one was making environmental films,
No,
really.
I was reading. Yeah.
I mean, there were some documentaries and things, but no one was making that much environmental content. So, but what's changed over the years is amazing. And now there's some absolutely incredible stuff coming out, which is centered around the environment and with a climate message behind it.
Yeah, most of the stuff that was being made at that time, that was environmental and climate focused, was stuff like on Discovery Channel or National Geographic. I used to
Yeah.
watch like they had like a special that used to show, it was every week, by Jacques Cousteau. The marine biologist and scuba diver. And like
Yeah.
that's where my love of the ocean and once
Yeah.
marine biologist came from watching those specials on National Geographic. And we don't even get stuff like that anymore. Like that's not even mainstream
Mhm.
anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like so it's great that I think it's great to show a film like this, like globally, and like as many festivals and schools and institutions as you can get it to. And in talking about that, there's a scene that a very particular shot in the film that I was very curious about. Like you mentioned at the beginning that the name Terra is based on from the Latin terra, meaning earth, terra firma, and I had initially in my brain, I did think of it as terror for form, as in terra forma, but I thought terror
Yeah.
because I see the film as a disaster horror. But there's a sequence where Elizabeth, she waters a vase of flowers in her room, and like, it seems like such an innocuous action. She's just taking a glass of water and giving it to and just pouring it into this vase of flowers. But that scene in particular there's always a scene in every film that I ever watch. I always wonder if this particular scene is more than it actually is, or if it's like the one scene that to me encapsulates the entire story. And that one kind of hit it for me, where she takes the water and you're thinking in your head, so this cup of water, clear water, that's pure water, is she's giving it to this flower, to this vase of flowers. And then I thought, okay, flowers, when you have them in a vase, they take up whatever is in the water, and I just, that kind of like hit home again, like not only Mother Nature, but also like Elizabeth herself is representative of this vase of flowers, like the liquid that she's ingesting as a mother is going into her child. So I wanted to ask you about that particular sequence. And because then after she waters the flowers and she's going through the door, there's like one loose petal on the
Mm.
table. And
Yeah.
it was like, oh, wait, that's the sign that everything's about to fall apart.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, yeah, you got it. Yeah. So
what was
yeah.
it? Oh, okay, so that's what it is.
Yeah. Basically, the flowers that are in her office are carnation flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Carnation is the Mother's Day flower. So it's
Oh,
it's the mother's flower. It represents motherhood, basically.
mm.
Um, so in her office, we wanted it to the design of it is that we wanted it to be, as filled with color, flowers, beauty, and life. And so that's where the idea came from, to fill the room with flowers, because it would be anyway, because of her character on her final shift. All of her work colleagues left her cards and flowers, wishing her all the best, all that kind of stuff. In terms of the watering, I think the important thing for that is just that, again, it's another character level to Dr. Terra, is that she's always looking after something. She's always tending to life. She's tending to these flowers, but really she's tending to the world. She's looking after her world.
Mm.
Um, so I think that was the point of it. And the idea of the petal, the one petal as she leaves the office, is alluding to something's about to go wrong. It's alluding to the idea that something is beginning to erode inside this perfect world that she created and that she loves. And that, so we actually did a few shots of that, a few different versions. One of the petal physically falling, different focus pulls, all this kind of stuff. But it just never really landed home properly. But just the one petal alone just sat there, just felt so sad, but definitely alludes to the threat that's about to come. So yeah, I'm glad you noticed that.
Yeah, it was like, oh, there's some like by the time she comes back, the whole bouquet is gonna be
Yeah,
leaves on the ground, withering and
yeah,
dying, and like me being dramatic.
yeah,
I was like, it's gonna be like a withering bouquet.
yeah.
I watched way too. I was just thinking of Miss Bouquet from Keep Up Appearances. My
Oh
brain.
yeah,
I
yeah,
used have you ever used to watch that show? I love that show, but
yeah, yeah.
Miss Bouquet, she was something else. But I digress. Um, so one of the last questions I wanted to ask you is you worked on different productions and like for shows and films and everything, mostly as like unit directors and producers and everything. For you, what was the biggest learning experience for you just making this short film? Because it's your first time like solo directing and everything, and you have your production company and everything. But what was it? What was the biggest learning lesson and learning curve for you making this film?
I think the biggest learning curve for me is actually something that, I won't say who, but an advice that I got before I started the project, was just to take it one shot at a time. And this idea that, you've done the prep, and the story. I've written it. I spent years developing it from when I wrote it to when we finally made it. It now came down to focusing on the shot, and not to
Mhm.
get too attached to the final piece of what the film's going to be, and what's this going to edit, what's this going to go to, but actually just focus in the moment and focus on the shot. And I think the learning curve for me was trying to separate my AD brain, because I usually
Mhm.
work as an assistant director, separate that from my creative side, and actually give more to my creative side, and let someone else for once look at the schedule and the time and all that kind of stuff. And it's hard to let go. It's hard to let go, because that's just me, partly, you know mild ADHD. My brain just fires in all cylinders. So when I'm hyper focused on something, I tend to um I tend to always be, I tend to always want things to be done quickly, because I,
Yeah.
I do get impatient. So I think I was trying to trying to get over that, give myself more time to be in the moment and be in that shot, and think more in the creative sphere, and try and let go of all the other things. And luckily I had such a great team around me, from Sophie, Stacey, and Caroline, who are the producers, and Catherine O'Reilly, who was the first AD, who took a lot of that pressure off me, the general running of things, which I would normally do in my day to day, and just allowed me to fully be in that creative world. Um, so that was a blessing to have those people on that job. So I think that's another thing. Actually, yeah, sorry, to add another learning curve, is just the importance of people, and having the right people with you.
Mhm.
um, because a film is not an individual, even though people will look at a film and they'll look at a Christopher Nolan film and they'll think Christopher Nolan, or they'll think of, a Wes Anderson film and it's Wes Anderson. But actually, the number of people and the different art forms that go into that, the from the costume design, the makeup design, the production design, the shot design with the director of photography, the lighting designs, all the way down to, it's a phenomenal blend of different art mediums that come together in this crazy day of filming. And in all other art forms, you have time, you know,
Yeah.
artwork, music, well, not necessarily maybe all the time, but artwork, music, and a lot of the things you have time and you can react to things. But that's the beauty of film, is that you're in the moment, and
Yeah.
you're it changes every day. Like, you can go into a film knowing exactly what you're going to do. You planned everything, you prepped everything, you turn up day one, and the cast member's stuck in traffic and isn't going to be there for an hour. Or you turn up and the weather's terrible, so you can't do that exterior scene because it's pissing it down with rain, and it was scripted as beautiful sunset. So it's a beautiful, ever-changing, chaotic, magical mess. Which I think is the learning curve is understanding that, and having fun with it, and not getting overwhelmed by what can go wrong, and actually use what can go wrong. Use the problems to benefit you, and use them in the right way. Um, so yeah, I think that was probably the biggest learning curve for me, is all of that.
Yeah, no, because I always say I see filmmaking as magic and as a special brand of alchemy. And no film is ever made by just one person. Like the thing, like some things people on like social media say, "Oh, but just take up your phone and you can make a film." I'm like, a film is more than just taking out your phone and filming. Like even if you use film, like there are people who have filmed on their phones, but you still need an editor. You still need someone to compose music. You still need a producer to help you get distribution. You still need someone to do your taxes if you're going to be distributing it. Like there's so many people involved in making a film, whether it is on cat, whether it's made with a gigantic IMAX camera or your cell phone. It
Yeah.
is still eventually going to be a group project. It is still eventually going to need other people to help you bring this vision to life.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about film. Film has all of these different art forms, and you have all these people from doing different disciplines, right down to craft services and the camera riggers, and and the stunt choreographers and the lighting technicians, and all of these people. They each bring their own expertise and their own and what they
Yeah.
can do to bring this vision
Yeah.
to life. And that's what I love about film. That's why I appreciate so much the labor that goes into making a film. For us, it might
Yeah.
be whether it can
That's
be a
why
5 minute.
I can never understand. I mean, I never will, but when people write negative reviews, or they write things, I just don't understand you know the reason, because just knowing how much goes into it, and how much time people put into something, and you just don't know what that person's having to go through to make that film happen. And I've heard of stories of people spending years on films. I mean, Jojo Rabbit for Taika took 10 years, 12 years. Avatar, even for James Cameron, took 15. It's even with plastic surgery, from when it was written to when we actually made it, took 5 years, really, from the concept to actual final film.
Yeah.
Because it was shelved and picked up, shelved, and we didn't have the right people, and then Anna, and so it's yeah, there's people put a lot of time and energy into it, and that's why short film's so amazing, because people are often giving their spare time, and they're giving favors, and so you're getting, and people are doing that purely because they're passionate about this
Mhm.
industry. They're not doing it for the money. They're not doing it for, they're wanting to do it because they're passionate and they love film. And I just, yeah, it's amazing. What you can achieve with the right people.
Yeah, no, I just recently interviewed another director recently, Janus Victoria. She's a Filipino filmmaker. Her film Diamonds in the Sand took 10 years to make. you know. And
Yeah.
she had other projects that she worked on before then, and she also has another full-time job that she does. And it was like, I just said, it was like for her, like it's about perseverance. You know, she sees filmmaking as a vocation rather than as a career because of just how much dedication and time and effort that has to be put into keep going back to it. But every time you get a failure, you have to keep going back to it. And she
Yeah.
said the same thing. Like for her, it's a vocation because she's like, if I didn't see it as a vocation, I would have given up doing this like a long time ago because it is
Yeah.
incredibly
Yeah.
difficult. And like
Yeah.
because I myself as a critic respect that so much. Like even when I do reviews for film, and I very rarely do reviews for films that I necessarily might not like or agree with. I might do them. I might write a review, not because I'm trashing the film, but because I'm working out what is it about the film that doesn't work for me. But then
Mm.
I will still say, but even amidst what I don't like, I still appreciate the time and effort that goes into it, you know, and like it might not work for me, but it might work for other people. And that's something that I always try to like when people ask me for advice on film criticism, I always tell them don't write a film critique or a review if you have if you want to only get out every negative thought you have about the film. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like, do it if there's something you're trying to figure out. Like for
Mm.
instance, you know, like do it if you're curious about like what is it about this film that didn't necessarily work for me. Look at it from that angle. Write the piece as if you're trying to ask or answer a riddle, you know. But if
Mm.
you're doing it from the point of purely to be nasty and mean, I'm like, don't bother doing it because that's to me that's not what film criticism is. You know, I always say that I see film criticism and writing reviews as me having a discussion with both the filmmaker and the audience. And
Mm.
like for me, I see it as I'm learning about filmmaking through these films, and I'm hoping that the filmmakers learn something about their own films and their own and filmmaking from listening to me as an audience member. You know,
Yeah.
I don't see film criticism as a way to be nasty because there are people who do that, you know. And I'm like, even if you don't like the film, there's no need to be nasty about it. There's a way to
Mm.
be constructive, you know. So like I agree with you. Sometimes I read reviews, I'm like, well, this was just mean. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
this is just me. Like, what do you like? What's like what? Like you're not
Mm.
even being constructive. You're not even offering anything like for that the filmmaker can learn from about their own film. You're just being like mean and nasty. I'm like, that's not what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
unfortunately, too many people see it that way. I'm like,
Yeah. No, I know. I know.
it's sad. Man, don't even start me on the industry. The industry right now is whew, the film industry is in a very
Mm.
weird place right now, and like I don't even know. But we still have hope, you know. There's still filmmakers like you making films like this, and actresses like Anna, and even Daniel with his creepy voiceovers. No, seriously,
Yeah.
every time he came on, it was just like stop because you are bad news every time. I'm like, stop it. He just seemed like it made me kind of think, you know, like in the Hunger Games, every time the alert would come over, I'm like, every time you heard that alert, some
Yeah.
bad
Yeah.
news. But thank you. But it's those little moments and those little things that just I think really make the film like really I think really important. And like I do hope you get to show it to more schools and more students who can watch it and have
Thank you.
discussions
Thank you.
about it. And but thank you so much for making this film because I think it is. I think this is the first film I'm aware of that really is addressing the issue of forever plastic and microplastics, and that's something that, as I said, more people
I
aren't.
don't think I've seen anything out there, but I'm sure something will pop up.
Well, your film is a great first step to people having a conversation, a very necessary conversation
Thank you.
about it, to helping us to be more aware of what we are putting into our bodies, not just food itself, but the implements that we use to get the
Mm.
food into our bodies.
Yeah. Thank you.
But
Thank
no,
you.
thank you so much, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you.